We all know that scaling your business and attracting the funding required to scale is a challenge. So we are thrilled to have a leading VC in seed funding here to tell us all about DBIC Ventures, an open and actively investing VC in Ireland. Welcoming our very own Richard Watson in conversation with the one and only Niamh Sterling, investment consultant with HBAN.
Thank you so much, Heidi. Thank you so much, Heidi. Yes, I'm delighted to welcome this morning Richard Watson, Managing Partner of DBIC Ventures. Richard, you're really welcome. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me.
Thank you, Niamh. Good morning, everyone.
So, Richard, you had your final close on your current fund in October just gone. So before we talk about that, it'd be really great for you to share with us some of the history, I guess, and the background of DBIC Ventures.
Yeah, well, in fact, we launched our current fund 2 years ago and reached a final close there, as you said, just before Christmas. But in fact, it is our fourth fund. A lot of people don't know, but we launched our very first seed fund in Ireland back in the early mid 90s, and then more recently managed the AIB seed fund, investing in about 40 companies. And we just come back into the market with this new fund, actively investing. So we have a long heritage of sort of investing in seed stage companies. That's really our core focus.
And just maybe a good idea, can you share, obviously you've got a big track record there and incredible expertise in the area, so can you share with us some of your success stories? Maybe some of the exit stories?
Yes, I mean, we've had some really good exits recently in particular. I suppose just to name a few, SilverCloud Health was a company that we invested in through our previous fund. We were actually the first investor in SilverCloud back in 2012 and followed on. It was a long enough journey in the digital health space, but they had a very, very good exit there just several months ago to Amwell Health in the US. That was a 270 million exit, so that was very, very good. iCabby was another one that we were the first institutional investor in, and they were acquired by Renault. We had another one that called REDT that went on the AIM market, and good return on that. And then we've got a whole portfolio of sort of companies that have really scaled, haven't quite exited yet, but are really doing good things. The likes of NewsWhip, Davra, Video Elephant, Grid Beyond. I won't go on. We had a few, of course, that didn't work out, but that's always the way.
And looking forward now, you have this new fund, and I think it'd be really interesting for the audience to know what is it that you're looking for, great in terms of the track record and the companies that you've invested in. So what is it now going forward? Is it similar? What are you looking for? What makes the company investable?
I suppose firstly, just to talk about our fund, it's very unique in the market in the sense that the fund is backed by 35 tech entrepreneurs and business leaders, as well as Enterprise Ireland. So a lot of the investors in the fund some of them are people that we would have invested in through our previous fund and they exited and have now invested in our new fund. Some are people that we would have supported in other areas in Dublin BIC through the Investor Ready programme, and have done well and have invested in the fund, and then some that we've co-invested with. I mean, our new fund, our focus is still quite broad, not quite as broad as it was before, but it's really the focus is medical devices and B2B SaaS companies. Our main focus is seed. That's really our area of expertise, and then following on all the way up to exit. So, we hold back most of our fund to follow on in subsequent rounds and companies that are performing. So we're kind of investing in that continuum of seed all the way up to Series A, first round investments from the fund.
So taking that then, how many deals would you have done, say, to date, and what ultimately would be your portfolio size?
We've done 9 investments to date. I mean, the pandemic slowed things down. We got to our final close just at the back end of last year, and real momentum now. We closed 5 deals in the last 8 or 9 weeks, another 2 in legals. We're hoping to do about 8 deals this year, and overall build up a portfolio of 25 to 30 companies. And you were asking before what we look for. I mean, I talked about the sectors, but really, everybody says it, but it is all about the team. So we spend a lot of time getting to know the founding team members. We see our investment thesis is that we form partnerships with the companies that we invest in. So we spend a lot of time getting to know founding teams before we invest, and just making sure there's alignment there and that we can work well together, because generally it's a fairly, it's not a short journey. It's can 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years.
Yeah, a close working relationship with them. Yeah. And Is there particular, so say in terms of what you're looking for in the companies, is there a particular level of traction, say, that you're going to be looking for as well as the founding team?
Yes, I mean the traction. I mean, if you're a software company, we are investing in some software companies that are pre-revenue. It depends on the type of business. If you've built up a very, very good pipeline of sort of high ticket price customers, and maybe have done some proof of concept and can see those early adopters converting over or at the point of conversion, we'll invest. If you're a B2B SaaS company where the unit economics in terms of the cost of acquiring customers is really important, we want to see some early unit economics to show that in time the business is viable and it can really scale. In other words, the long-term value of the customer is much, much greater than the cost of acquiring a customer.
And from that, then you're looking at making sure that they're focusing on the right metrics too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then obviously, we invest in medtech. 70% of our focus is software, 30% or thereabouts medtech. Medtech companies are always pre-revenue. And in those companies, it's typically, they're most generally spin-outs from university. The technology has been de-risked, and it's all about sort of getting to regulatory approval.
And just in terms of the sector, so you're talking about B2B SaaS, are there any particular sectors that you're interested in, be it fintech, HR tech?
We're fairly agnostic. I mean, we're seeing, we're B2B SaaS across a wide range of verticals. If you look at what we see the most would be sort of fintech, HR tech, digital health. I suppose, we have an interest in all sectors, but just looking at the sort of the deals that are in play at the moment and the ones that we've done, digital transformation, industry 4.0, construction tech, digital health are all sort of sectors of interest. But as I said, we're agnostic. Mobility tech is another sector we see quite a lot of good opportunities in as well at the moment.
I meant to also say to people, if they'd like to ask Richard questions, please do pop them into our chat function. I'd be delighted to ask a couple of questions with him of him at the end even. So within HBAN, we're seeing, I would say, more bigger seed rounds coming in, right? And slightly more complex deals for us in terms of we're looking at syndicate of syndicates, and we're investing alongside other VCs. In fact, we've done a number of deals with your good self. So is that something that you're seeing in the ecosystem as well? Is that something that DBIC Ventures do?
Yeah, I mean, seed rounds are definitely bigger than they were than with our previous time, the passage of time. Companies are scaling quicker, round sizes are larger. Our model is very much, we always co-invest, and just to your point there, if we look at sort of the last 5 deals we closed, they were all in fact alongside HBAN. And we're actually working on 2 deals, with one with a European VC, which we're leading. It's a follow-on in one of our portfolio companies, and another one is a first round where we're co-investing with 2 other Irish VCs. But, with HBAN, it works very well. We can share some of the due diligence. It makes it a lot easier for the company. There's generally everybody's coming in on the same term sheet, and one set of legals, shared due diligence. So co-investment is very much our model. And, with quite a number of the companies that we invested in and that we're looking at now, we're helping them to build rounds. So we help to sort of network them in with, if they haven't already gone to HBAN or to other funds for that matter. So yes,
and
HBAN privates.
Your typical deal size be then? I
mean, we can invest up to 3 million in a company through multiple rounds. Now, we don't go in all guns blazing in a first round. So typically, our check size is up to 650,000 in a first round, and we hold back most of our allocation of the fund for following on through multiple rounds in many cases. Our typical sort of round size for software stage, software company seed stage, typically 750K. To 1 million or 1.2 million is kind of a pretty common range. If I look back sort of 5-6 years ago, 500K was probably quite a common round size. If you're a medical device company, the round sizes tend to be larger, longer R&D cycles and just more capital intensive. And we see medical device seed stage deals being anywhere from sort of 1.3 or 1.4 million up to several million.
And how long would it take, would you say, to close a round? So say a company, you come in, you meet them first, like them, broadly feel that they're a fit for you, and the sector of interest. You're ticking all the boxes here. So how long do you think it typically would you see it take from first to meet to closing a round?
I mean, it can happen quite quickly. Generally, it takes a bit longer than most people think, and that's really, the bottleneck is just bringing all the different co-investors, because in any one round you might have 2 or 3 or 4 groups of co-investors. I mean, we did close deals. I mean, there was one particular company we invested in last year, and we fast-tracked our due diligence. So in terms of dealing with us, we are pragmatic and dynamic. We're a small team. We're responsive, and if we can see a deal has the potential to move quickly and everything is in place, things can move fairly quickly. In a few months, a couple of months.
And if say, for example, you have a company, right, and they're coming in, they have a deal lead, and you're a co-investor with them. Do you just piggyback on say the due diligence, the IT, DD, the legals, or do you do top to bottom yourself as well?
We would very much share. I mean, most of the deals we've done, we've led, and we've probably been the ones leading the due diligence, and we've shared our DD with others. There are a few deals where we haven't been the lead investor, and we're not precious about leading. Where, for example, in the medical device space, where we've got the MedTech Syndicate and IRIS, you've got this deep domain knowledge in that sector, and so very much we're not into getting companies to go through all the hoops again and ask the same questions. So, like, our co-investment with HBAN works really well. We collaborate well together. We share due diligence, and it makes everybody's lives easier. Especially the company.
Yeah.
So we don't kind of start from the beginning again.
Yeah. And like, the quicker you can get through that process, get the money in the bank, and the founders get back to growing their company.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, it's a huge distraction. I think most founders underestimate, if they haven't done it before, the amount of time that it takes to raise, a round. And we try to be. I think we are very open and pragmatic and dynamic with the teams that we meet, and conscious of the fact that their time is precious.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a question coming in there for you, Richard. Is there a specific reason only SaaS and medtech is considered? Would a B2B hardware startup be considered?
So, this is our main focus. It's not absolute. So, I mean, obviously some of the medtech companies are hardware. We invested in a lot of hardware before in our previous fund. And the challenge, I mean, there's a little bit of a market failure, admittedly, if you're sort of, say, semiconductor spin-out from university, because there aren't that many co-investors in the ecosystem that are investing in hardware. And what we found with some of the sort of semiconductor or photonics companies that we invested in, trying to find co-investors that invest in that space was difficult, and also the follow-on funding requirements. I wouldn't absolutely rule out that we wouldn't ever do B2B hardware, but I suppose, we're broader than many funds, and our focus, the areas that we feel, we've done best in and most comfortable with from our previous fund would be sort of B2B SaaS and medtech.
And actually, I would say that's probably what's led to a lot of the co-investment with HBAN, is that we're effectively sector agnostic. So we would look at that as well. Coming from a well-established company outside of Ireland and in search for startup funding in Ireland, where does one begin looking, or what are the best steps to follow to gain interest from investors based in Ireland?
So if you're coming out, I mean, so we see a lot of international entrepreneurs moving to Ireland. It's a great country now. The ecosystem has really evolved considerably over the last decade or so for startups, just in terms of all the supports and the funding and, HBAN and the funds and everything. I mean, so we do engage with companies that are coming in from overseas. I mean, for us in our fund, we only invest in Irish companies. So I suppose we don't want to see companies just coming here purely because they think it's an easier place to get money.
Yeah.
But, there are a number of companies we're engaged with that actually reached out to us from, say, Europe or the US, where they are in the process of moving over. And so, it's okay to reach out to VCs. I would say go to Enterprise Ireland as well. They have a lot of supports, and, they have people in there specifically dealing with overseas entrepreneurs looking to move to Ireland. So I would say Enterprise Ireland is probably a good first port of call.
Yeah, I would agree. And likewise for HBAN, you need to be an Irish headquartered company to raise funding with us. Yeah. That's just one of the key criteria. What are the key lessons then that you've learned from investments which have not worked out? Interesting one.
It's a cliche, but it really is about the team. And I'd say, one of the lessons is, we really look for teams that have depth of domain knowledge and are complementary, and they have a good balance of tech and commercial. I'd say the investments that haven't worked out, by and large, there's maybe a little bit of imbalance in the team, and there are some deals that we did that maybe we probably shouldn't have followed on in, and we did because we thought maybe the market was a bit early. So I mean, the key lesson for us is really just get to know the team as well as you can before you invest. I mean, obviously we look at everything in the business plan, but for us it's really about the team and making sure there's alignment on their vision and their ambition, they have resilience, and they have a good balance in their team between sort of tech and commercial.
When you talk about being early, or the market being early, does that mean timing is important from bringing a product to market?
Timing is really important. I mean, it's, you know, if you go into a very mature market, then there's invariably a lot of competition that's quite evolved. And if the market's too early, then, you know, all the other risks, it's just an additional element of risk that goes on top of all the other risks that are kind of, you know, involved in startups. So, you know, we did invest, like, for example, in the EV space before, and, you know, everybody thought the EV market was going to boom sort of 2011, and then they said 2013, and it was 2015. And, you know, if you're investing in a company that's selling into that space and it hasn't taken off, you know, that's a real challenge.
Yeah.
And, you know, we've had a few like that. So getting the timing right is really important.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, can I ask you, have you any observations around your pipeline that you'd like to share with us, or what you're seeing in the ecosystem?
I'm really positively enthused. If you just look at the quality of the pipeline, the deal flow, there's much greater level of sort of savviness and sophistication in startups. You know, we're just seeing a much higher quantity of really good quality opportunities. You know, we meet several hundred companies a year. We're going to invest in sort of half a dozen or a bit more every year. So it's, you know, we are actually turning down companies that are, you know, they're really good teams. So it's competitive. So I would say, you know, success breeds success. And, you know, we've had a whole range of successful exits. I mean, Ireland Inc. has. And that's really fed into the ecosystem. That knowledge is being shared with other startups. And we're also seeing companies scaling much quicker than we did sort of 5-10 years ago as well. So overall, very, very positive about the ecosystem, and, you know, the new breed of startups that we're investing in now, I think, can be even more successful than many of those in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. So if anybody wants to get in contact with you, Richard, how do they do that?
Yes, I mean, you can go to our website, dbicventures.ie, or we have an email address, inquiries@dbicventures.ie. Don't be afraid to reach out. You know, we like to be companies early, even if you think you're 6 months or a year away from raising a seed round. Do reach out to us. You know, many of the deals that we've just closed are companies that we first engaged with 18 months ago. You know, and they were just starting out in their journey, and we kept in touch. So just reach out. We're very, very active. Love to hear from you. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Richard, for taking the time to talk to us this morning. I'm afraid that's all we have time for, folks.